Tinatawag na puno ng buhay ang niyog dahil sa dami ng benepisyo mula rito. Pero dahil sa pesting coconut scale insect o CSI, ang puno ng buhay, unti-unti nang namamatay.
Dati kumikita po ng malaki, maabot ng 200, yan, nagkama dito na. Pagod pa pangangatyo ako, tiyambungan ako. Ay, ba't kumikita lang mo, wala kakot na peso.
Pati yung mga bata, hirap din. Imbis na magbibigyan lalo ng magandang bukas mahirap.
Isa sa mga barangay na naapektuhan ng CSI ay ang barangay Ilayang Taykin sa Liliw, Laguna. Kwento ng 79 na taong gulang na si Lolo Fredo, noon umaabot ng 2,000 piso ang kanyang kita sa pag-akyat sa mga nyog upang makakuha ng gagawing lambanog.
Basta kalitang ko sandang kapulo. Natigis ako ng mabisero ng balde. Ganyan yung plastic nila. Anin ba? Sa linggo naman kakadalawang sila. Yung aking siyam na anak, diyan ko binoy.
Ayon sa anak ni Lolo Fredo na si Manuelito, ang mga puno na kanyang inaakyat, pinutakti ng CSI.
Ano epekto nga ito? Dahil sa isang araw, kikita ka lang si Senta. Kapos na kapos naman sa araw-araw yun. Kung di pamilya yung mga anak ko, hindi ba kain kami.
2009 pa nang nagsimulang kumalat ang CSI ayon sa Advocates of Science and Technology for the People o AGHAM.
Mayroon pang nanaliksik ng ginawa noong pang 2009. Pero ang problematic doon ay bakit hindi kaagad nakatugon ang Philippine Coconut Authority and sila yung sole agency na pwedeng tumingin dito sa isyong ito. Bakit umabot pa na from Calabarzon ay kumalat pa ito hanggang Basilan?
Hindi raw agad nalaman ng Philippine Coconut Authority kung anong peste ang tumama sa mga nyog ayon sa The Crop Protection Cluster ng UP Los Baños.
Kala siya ay native species ng Aspidiotus. So ang common na nangyayari pag native species, pag umulan na, tag-ulan na, nawawala yan. So tataas yan, ang population niyan pag dry season. 2011, tumataas na yan. Nagkaroon kami ng hypothesis na this could be another species which be very similar to the native species. Kaya morphologically, yung sa itsura lang, mahirap siyang paghiwalayin.
Ayon kay Romulo Arancon Jr., bagong hepe ng PCA, may 2 milyong puno ng nyog ang napeste ng CSI sa Calabarzon area.
Kung tutuusin, yung 2 million is only 0.13% of the total coconut trees in the Philippines. Kasi meron tayong approximately 350 million coconut trees in the Philippines.
Aabot sa halos 10,000 raw na magsasaka ang apektado ng peste.
The estimate that we have done indicates that about 55 to 60% of their total production has been lost. So, ibig sabihin, kung ang isang niyog ay namumunga ng 40 nuts per tree per year, mga 15 na lang o 20 na lang ang naiiwan.
May-ari ng isang nyugan si Aleli sa Liliw, Laguna.
Sobrang laki talaga ng epekto dahil nabiyahe nga kami ng Lambanog. Dati sa isang linggo nakakabiyahe kami ng 2 beses, 3. Ngayon, 1 beses, pahirapan. Kung halimbawa kumakain ka sa isang linggo nang nakakabili ka ng baboy, ng ngayon hindi ka na makabili. Talagang tuyo na lang.
Si Manuelito, hindi alam kung paanong pagkakasyahin ang kinikita.
60 na lang araw-araw. Minsan, pangulam din man, itlog. Sigarilyo lang, konting langis. Nagkakasya na.
June 5, nilagdaan ni Pangulong Noynoy Aquino ang Executive Order 169. Inilalagay nito sa state of emergency ang mga lugar na apektado ng CSI gaya ng Calabar Zone at Isabela City sa Basilan. Kasabay nito, itinalaga niya ang dating senador na si Francis Kiko Pangilinan bilang Presidential Advisor on Food Security and Agricultural Modernization. Pero wala pa rin daw malinaw na programa laban sa peste ng niyog.
It's a motherhood statement eh. Wala namang detalye o konkretong steps or action kaming nakikita na tutugon ito doon sa kasalukuyang kalagayan ngayon ng coconut industry. Para lang may masabi na may ginawa kami, tumugon kami, nagbigay kami ng policy, ng isang programa para dito.
And the treatment there will be different.
Inilipat sa ilalim ng pamumuno ni Secretary Pangilinan ang National Food Authority o NFA, National Irrigation Administration o NIA, Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority o FPA, at Philippine Coconut Authority o PCA. Sa pagkakatalaga ni Secretary Pangilinan, lumitaw ang espekulasyon na wala ng tiwala ang Pangulong Aquino kay Department of Agriculture Secretary Proceso Alcala.
May mga nagsasabi po. Actually po, pinag-usapan po namin ng Pangulo at sabi po niya, Prosi, malaki yung iyong kagawaran ay sa dami niyan, ang dami mong tinututukan. I think mas mabuti kung okay ba sa'yo na patulong ka kay Kiko dyan. Sabi niya gano'n ang Pangulo. Ang Pangulo naman po ay, in fairness naman po sa kanya, ay pinakikita po naman niya na patuloy po ang kanyang pagtitiwala sa inyong abang lingkod. At hindi naman po ako nahihiya na magsalita na may performance po na maayos ang department.
Itinanggi rin ni Alcala na nagkakasapawan sila sa kanilang trabaho ni Secretary Pangilinan.
Kung ako po ay may nakikita na mga bagay na pwede kong itulong sa kagawarang hawak po na ngayon ng ating pong kaibigang Secretary Kiko, ay akin pong ibibigay na suggestion. Padadaanin ko po sa isang magandang pamamaraan na pagsusuhestyon po sa kanya.
Sa ngayon ay umaaksyon na raw ang gobyerno laban sa peste ng niyog.
Sa containment, we have quarantine measures, and this means that we will monitor or we will not even allow the movement of essentially seedlings, seedlings at saka yung buko from the infested region to other parts of the country. Pero yung buko pwede pa rin siyang ipalabas for as long as malinis.
Una raw ay tinatabas na ang mga puno na may peste.
Yung pruning is the removal or the cutting of trees that are infested with coconut scale insect. After that, we recommend trunk injection. Trunk injection using the systemic insecticide na talagang directed towards the coconut scale insect.
June 20, nagsimula ang ganitong programa. Pero matapos ang halos isang linggo lamang, itinigil ito.
Ang service provider hindi na-approve noon sa bids. So they have to conduct another one the following week, that is Monday. Kaya nagkaroon lang ng delay dahil lang 'yon sa pagsunod sa kung ano ang batas na ginagawa.
Bukod sa problema sa niyog, nariyan din ang problema sa pagpupuslit ng bigas at ang mataas na presyo nito. Ang NIA naman, hindi naabot ang target na 81,170 hectares na dapat nabigyan ng irigasyon noong 2013.
Ang kagaya ni Senator Pangilinan na walang ka-background sa agrikultura at mukhang hindi rin naman niya tansya kung gaano katindi at kasan kalaki yung problema ng ating agrikultura.
Ang mga sagot ni Secretary Francis Kiko Pangilinan dito lamang sa Bawal ang Pasaway kay Mareng Winnie.
Senator, ipinaliwanag ba sa inyo ni Presidente Aquino kung bakit nag-create siya ng Presidential Assistant for Food Security and modernization. This is the first time that's happened, no?
I think so in this respect na tinanggal yung 4 na ahensya mula sa DA, ilagay sa Office of the President.
Pinaliwanag ba sa inyo kung bakit? Unsatisfied ba siya kay Alcala?
Ang palagay niya, kailangan ng tulong ni Secretary Alcala dito sa 4 na ahensya na ito. 2 taon na lang, lumabas yung ating GDP figures nung 2013, 7.2%, pero ang agriculture 1% lang napag-iwanan. Naroon pa rin ang joblessness, naroon pa rin ang unemployment. So ang pakiramdam ni Presidente talagang kinakailangan mag-double up ng trabaho sa agri-sector dahil nandun yung pinakamahirap nating mga kababayan at nandun din yung tinatawag na dapat maapektuhan ng inclusive growth.
Okay, tell me, what was the reaction of Secretary Alcala to your being appointed presidential advisor?
Sinabi niya sa atin, kailangan ng tulong, kaya magtutulungan kami.
Hindi ba nag-overlap ang inyong trabaho ni Secretary Alcala?
In areas that there is overlapping, we co-coordinate po kami. For example, pagka-farm to market roads. So in these respects, ang marching orders po ni Presidente is we have to coordinate and we have to thresh it out in the budget. So that's what we're doing in fact now. In areas that are exclusives, importation of rice, wala naman hong overlap. But dito ho pumapasok. For example, in the NEDA meeting, magkatabi kami, Secretary Prosi. He helped defend the budgets for irrigation that were big-ticket items because it was originally under his wing, until it was turned over to us. So nagtutulungan kami. And the last 3 years that we were working together, siya ho sa executive, ako po sa legislative, hindi naman ho kami nagkaroon ng major issues.
So in other words, you think there's enough work for 2?
Yes,
in agriculture.
Especially because we are pressed for time.
Ano ba ang qualifications niyo? Bakit kayo inappoint ni President Aquino? I mean, just because you were a former senator na kanyang kapartido?
Hindi naman po siguro lang yun. Although kasama po yun, siyempre, but I was chairman of the Senate Agriculture and Food Committee for 3 years.
2010?
Yes.
From 2010.
So tayo po ay naupo at napag-aralan din natin yung mga problema ng agrikultura.
2010, 2011, 2012, kayo ang chairman ng committee. Ba't hindi nyo, why didn't you find out about it? Hindi ba kayo binibigyan ng information?
Our constituency, our voters from Batangas, groups, were already bringing this, the issue to my attention. And we would confer, we were conferring with the Department of Agriculture, and they were assuring us, that they will, the research is being undertaken, they were doing spraying, they were doing this, so they were, apparently it was not adequate.
But in July 2013, the SONA ni Presidente, wala siyang sinabi about coconut except that yung coconut farmers, 20,000 lang ang kita nila per hektarya ng coconut. Kaya ang kanyang advocacy, intercropping. One word that there is a possible infestation. He didn't know about it, which means the Department of Agriculture did not tell him about it. What's going on here? Why was he up to last year saying nothing about any problem in coconut?
Clearly, when I looked at the performance and then the details, talagang kulang. They spent total of 65 million, for example, for 4 years for 4 provinces, mobilizing 120 people for 4 provinces, 25 technicians. So it was really hindi sapat.
So you're saying that the coconut industry suffered from a lack of attention from the Department of Agriculture?
A lack of resources mobilization and staff support. That's why we as soon as we stepped in, we started convening the task force, we expanded it, we established a command center, nagkaroon kami ng war room sa PCA, sa 8th floor. And then we touched base immediately with the local governments. Even the local governments were saying na ang focal institution dito is the PCA actually.
So the PCA was interested only in getting its money and not interested in spending it. Is that it?
Well, in a way, judging by how, From January to May of 2014, for example, 16 million lang ang ginastos.
O yan.
For 4
Kinakaltasan
provinces.
palagi ang mga coconut farmer pero hindi sila ginagastusan.
Yun ang naging kakulangan, which precisely we went on to address. Immediately, we asked for a briefing. We briefed the president also. He signed that emergency measure declaration,
What,
EO 169.
to what do you ascribe that lack of information?
Well, perhaps, I can only speculate, but perhaps bringing him bad news in that respect,
Is no good.
perhaps there was a filtering, an attempt, to...
And do you think
But
that
I-
habit of keeping bad news from the president still goes on with respect to the rest of the cabinet?
Hindi naman po siguro lahat. Like, for example, in my case, it's bad news. I brought it to his attention right away.
Ang hindi ko maintindihan sabi nila na the post presidential assistant was offered to you in June 2013.
That's right.
Ayaw niyong tanggapin. Hindi niya inoffer, Ms. Kikinino. In other words, para bang hindi malaki ang problema. Pwedeng intayin ka. He must have known that something was wrong. But because you did not say yes, he did not offer it to anybody else. He did not do anything. And then he gave a fantastic report on SONA in 2013. Ano ba yan? Can you explain that?
Well, actually, even before the impeachment trial of Chief Justice Corona, napag-usapan na namin ano ang plano ko after 2013. And I said, wherever I can help, Mr. President. And so in other words, the offer was even before, long before that, perhaps something in the line of agriculture.
But he wanted you to be in agriculture.
He wanted, yes. In June of 2013, I begged off. But my understanding then, the offer was not the same as the offer now. It was more of an advisory. Wala hong agencies. In fact, I'm surprised.
In other words, parang consuelo para sa
Hindi
iyo.
naman ho consuelo.
Paano yun? Wala advisor lang pala.
Para makatulong. So wala hong, in fact, until we met, akala ko I would be administrator of one of the 8 or one of the government offices and then advisor.
In other words, from 2013 nung kinausap kayo hanggang just last
May
month,
of 2014.
lumala ang problema. In terms of prioritization, ano ang una niyong gagawin bilang presidential assistant on farm modernization and food security? NFA, PCA, NIA, or FPA?
Well, lahat. Sabay-sabay. Every week, I will meet them twice a week. Because hindi pa pwedeng, halimbawa, yung presyo ng bigas, hindi naman pa pwedeng hindi priority yun.
Tayo muna, presyo ng bigas. What do you think is happening? Why do you think there is a rise in price, etc.?
Well, a combination of several factors. One, the tightening of the supply. Two, the purchase price of...
How can it tighten the supply? You
It
imported
came
already.
a little late. It should have come earlier. But the other is, at this stage, buying of palay is around 25 pesos.
So the farmer is doing very well.
Yes, the farmer is doing good.
I'm
which is
for
good.
that. Sure.
Which is a good thing. But of course, the net effect of that is you cannot sell prices rise low, because mataas ang buying.
Pero yung rice ng farmer mo that's unbroken. Yung inyong rice broken
Yes.
kaya
So usually ang rule of thumb is if you buy palay at X amount, you sell rice at 2X, for transport, for milling, so that's why it's hitting 40 to 50 already. That's why we doubled in Metro Manila from 12,500 to 25,800 a day at 32 pesos and 27 pesos. So
32 is for the fancy,
yes,
well-milled.
yes, well-milled, and then
Pero
27.
it's still broken.
15% broken. The other one is 25% broken. But we had a testing kanina.
Kumain kayo.
Yes. Di pa naman masakit yung tiyan ko.
Papakainin niyo ba yan sa anak niyo?
I think the 27 and the 32, pwede na siya. Hindi siya katulad nung dati. Because before, they were saying, hindi talaga pwedeng kainin.
Eh yung NFA,
Yes.
na sinabi niya kailangan linisin, sinabi mo yung sa iyong press conference,
Tama
no?
po yun.
Sabi niya clean it up.
Apo.
Kung merong kailangan magpaliwanag at hindi magandang paliwanag, anong gagawin niyo?
Well, ang marching orders ng presidente, dapat managot kung mayroong kalokohan.
Sino ang mananagot? Yung past NFA?
Well, kung may kalokohan. That's why kailangan mag-clarify.
Baka taguan ng taguan na lang yan.
Hindi po. In fact, nag-meet na rin po kami ng NFA Council. Magkakaroon ho kami ng strategic planning for the remaining 2 years. How do we open up the process? Paano mas magiging transparent yung process of importation? We want the BIR to also come in so that it is legitimate traders who will participate so that we move away dun sa nangyari nung nakaraan na inabuso yung proseso ng pag-i-issue ng permit.
But that's very interesting. Secretary Balisacan, Secretary Domingo, Secretary Purisima are all members of the NFA Council. That means they were serving since 2010. And they did not see anything wrong.
Well, yun ang aming in fact, yun ang isang panibagong patakaran which we would like to endorse and recommend na total 2 taon na lang ito, hindi na dapat representatives ang pinadadala.
Ayan. Hindi sila mismo ang pumupunta.
May mga
pinakamababa dyan ang pumupunta.
Mga undersecretary naman po. But still,
undersecretary, assistant, baka director lang eh.
umabot ng 177 billion ang utang ng NFA. Ngayon napababa na sa mga 154 billion. But kung ganun kalaking halaga, dapat yung
154 billion utang since when? This is not only Aquino's administration.
No.
This is
Yes.
This is
Nag-umpisa ho ito 2003 if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
It was around 25 billion. Pagdating ng 2010, umabot na ho ng 177 billion.
ngayon bumaba
We've
na.
pared it down.
Mukhang merong mga ginagawa yung NFA kung nababa nila yung...
Well, yes. Merong mga efforts to really pare down yung utang by way of yung pagbenta halimbawa. In this case, yung in-import na 800,000 metric tons, for example, we will sell it a little higher but lower than market price, no? Kasi mababa ang presyo ng import.
Yung market price naman ng mga fancy, walang broken yun eh.
Yes, 51 pesos yun.
Broken ito.
Strategically, kasama din po yun sa plano na kinakailangan sigurong i-absorb ng national government, but kinakailangan din magkaroon ng reform sa NFA para hindi yung... Kasi kung in-absorb, tapos hindi mo naman ni-reforma, halimbawa, yung buying high, selling low. Wala ho talagang panalo riyan.
Anong mangyayari dyan? I mean, you think you can solve that problem?
The support that we should give the farmers instead of price subsidies, siguro, should come from farm implements, from lowering their cost of production.
In other words, do you think that the NFA should continue to exist? Since 1990,
I think
lahat ng mga eksperto sinasabing alisin na yan, NFA, source of corruption yan, walang nangyayari. Hanggang ngayon, andyan pa yan. Kasi...
I think for buffer stocking, kailangan siguro.
Okay.
But for buying high and selling low, that is something that I am looking at. Perhaps we have to review and re-examine that policy.
Okay. What do you intend to do with NIA and fertilizer?
Well, in NIA, marami tayong ginagawa, pero yung targets for additional irrigated areas, hindi naman. So we have to retool and focus on additional irrigated areas.
Yung NIA administrator, ito ba yung...
Tinanggal.
Yung tinanggal ni President Aquino last year because hindi siya... Yung kanyang successor, tatanggilin nyo naman.
His term ends June 30. And I sense that we could infuse new blood.
Itong mga senador natin na andun ngayon is sangkot sila due to their pork barrel allocations 2007 to 2009. And in 2007 to 2009, andun kayo sa Senado. Bakit wala kayong sa pork barrel?
Well, two things. Una, hindi talaga tayo nakialam o nagturo ng bogus organizations. That's one. But the other part is 2.5 years from 2007 to 2009, wala ho tayong PIDAP.
Wala kayong
Opo.
PDAF. In other words, hindi kayo binigyan
Wala
kasi nasa opposition
Yes,
kayo.
we asked for GMA's resignation in 2005.
Oo.
So tuloy-tuloy na yun. We need hold na yun.
You only got your pork barrel the first half of 2007.
2007.
So that was 100 million.
Yes.
What did you use that money for?
Several-
Did you give it to NGOs?
No,
Did you get any kickback?
No.
Oh, you're sure?
Yes.
You can look at me straight in the
Yes,
eye. Okay. Pero pagkatapos nyo naging senador, naging farmer daw kayo.
Well, that's
Di ba
also true
siguro
po.
that you can, that maybe that helped him choose you? How large is your farm, Mr.
Maliit
Senator?
lang po. It's a family farm, less than 3 hectares.
Okay. And what do you plant?
Organic lettuce and herbs. And then
And
I have
how long have you been planting?
2 years. I've been
2 years.
harvesting for 2 years.
Harvesting for 2 years.
Yes.
Ano ang what is it like to be a farmer? How much magkano ang kita
Ay,
nyo?
lugi pa ho. Lugi
Ay,
pa.
aba,
Kasi pagka pinag-aralan po ang farming,
ano naman yan?
ang small land holding kasi, any material on agriculture and small land holdings will tell you that from the time you start up to the time that you earn a profit is anywhere between 3 to 5 years. In other words, talagang hindi kaagad magkakaroon ng kita. And that's precisely also the reason why we have to support our farmers.
Ayan. From first-hand experience,
Yes,
you know
yes.
that the farmer has to be given support services.
Yes, he has to, and in fact, I would call it hand-holding.
Hand-holding.
For anywhere between 3 to 5 years.
From your point of view, kailan mangyayari ito?
Well,
Yung inyong mga ideas that the farmer has to be handheld for 5 years, that there must be support
we
services.
are already in the process of identifying templating. In other words, coconut farm communities and rice farming communities wherein we will mobilize resources around them together with the private sector. I'll be meeting a number of private sector investors, market actually, or willing to support by way of some form of PPP, buying the products directly from the coconut communities. So hopefully by the end of the 2 years, maybe we can have 20 to 25 farming communities that are leveling up and getting the support that they need.
Wow, 20 to 25 farming communities. Yung communities nyo ng coconut farmers belongs to 68 provinces
Totoo yun.
out of the 80.
Yes.
And your rice farmers are all over the country. And then you say that after 2 years, 25 communities only.
But
Naku
this is-
naman,
no, but this is-
napakababaw ng kaligayahan ninyo.
But this is templating.
Oh.
In other words, this will be the model farm. They become the takeoff point.
Okay.
You reach a critical mass, a number, in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and that becomes the roadmap for other farms to follow.
Now we go down to the person of Kiko Pangilinan. Let me be very frank. I heard that you had a mistress and a daughter outside.
Not
you want
true.
us? Not true.
Not
You do not have a child with some secretary of yours.
Not true.
Not true. Okay.
That came out.
Yeah.
It would come out during elections.
Okay. Look at me straight in the eye and say that you have never been unfaithful to Sharon Cuneta.
I've never been unfaithful. That's true.
If Sharon,
Because if
baka naman Sharon will call me up and say, he's a liar.
Sharon wouldn't do that.
No,
If she finds out
no,
I have
she's
been
so loyal.
If she finds out I have been unfaithful, I will be, I'll be kicked out of the house. And we've been together 18 years. In fact, at one point, when it wasn't working, that Como, dirty tricks, they started saying I was gay. So ano ba ito? I'm supposed to be a womanizer or am I supposed to be gay? Diba? That's dirty politics for you. In fact, Sharon was quoted, I thought showbiz was dirty.
Politics is
even
much dirtier
Yeah.
pala.
Yeah.
What about this adopted?
And if you notice, right now, is there stories about it? No, because I'm not running, I'm not in politics, I'm just working.
What's this story about an adopted son? How did you
Yes.
get? Why did you feel
Well,
that?
a friend of Sharon called her and said that a baby has to be given up. The mother cannot take care of the baby. It's a boy. Would you be interested? We've been asked that before, but this is the first time si Sharon said yes. So
this adopted son of yours has absolutely nothing to do with your fooling around.
no. Well, it's kind of baduy or cheesy or corny, but I cannot hurt my wife.
Naku, Senator, if I find out that you're telling me a lie, I will really go up against you like mad.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are your plans in 2016?
I don't have plans to run for higher office. Ayoko na mag-ambisyon.
What does Sharon say about your possible going for the vice presidency or the presidency?
No, it's really up to me, she says. But like I said, I'm not interested.
But you have also, aside from your adopted son, you have also adopted Casey.
That's right. When she
is now your daughter.
When she was 16, yes.
She was 16.
Yes.
Why didn't you adopt her? Why didn't you adopt her?
No, it took time.
Gabby gave his permission.
He actually was not here. He was still in the U.S.
Hindi ba sumama ang loob niya?
Well, he opposed it, but the court decided it would be to the best interest of the child.
Did he oppose it?
Meaning
he
had a lawyer.
He had a lawyer opposing it.
Yes, but I guess
And
at
he
that
lost.
point, the judge felt it would be.
And did Casey feel that was the right thing to do?
At that point, yes.
Really? Huh?
Yeah. Because she appeared there.
Okay.
They
So
would
how many
have
children do you have?
So Casey, Frankie, Miel, and Miguel.
And Miguel is your adopted, and
Yes.
Casey is your adopted,
Yes.
and Frankie and Miel are
yes.
biological
Yes.
children. And they're all happy under the same roof? Well,
Oh,
Casey is no
Casey,
longer
yes,
with you.
yes. Yeah, in fact, they adore Miguel because boy eh. Siguro kung naging girl si Miguel, baka nagkaroon pa ng konting selos.
Alam niyo mga kapuso, hindi ko tinitignan itong appointment ni Secretary Pangilinan as an insult to Secretary Alcala or as an indication of his incompetence. Hindi po yan. Talagang may problema tayo, nakita na may problema, kailangan magtulungan. Ayan ang aking sinasabi dyan tungkol kay Alcala at kay Pangilinan. Second, also, I realized that Secretary Pangilinan has something good to say. He said that the farmer has to be handheld for 5 years hanggang matuto siya, etc. Ayan po, sinasabi ng iba noon pa. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa ginagawa yon. I hope that this time it will be done. We need the farmers, we need to help them, we need to handhold them as they're going along because agriculture is the basis for any development that takes place in this country. Ngayon, meron naman na tayo mga problema na nakita. Halimbawa, sa NFA po, yung pala, miyembro ng council, Secretary of Finance, Secretary of Economic Planning, Secretary of Trade, Secretary of Agriculture, ay ang ahensyang yan, 170 billion pesos in debt, walang nangyari. Ano bang ginagawa nitong mga taong ito who are supposed to be overseeing what is going on? Hindi ba? And the second thing I noticed, napunan nyo ba? Mukhang hindi sinasabi kay Presidente Pinoy kung ano ang mga problema tinatago sa kanya. Naku, hindi dapat ganyan. The first obligation of anyone, whether to the president, to his wife, or to his children, or to his boss, is always to tell the truth, to give all the facts, so that decisions can be made on an informed basis, even if it costs you your job. Kung hindi ganyan ang ginagawa ninyo, ayan ang pasaway. At alam niyo naman, bawal ang pasaway kay Mareng Winnie.